Hey, what's going on, man? It's your boy Joe Hinton sitting in the Para Podcast studio. I'm here to let you know we got podcasts and content coming your way. Tap in with your boy, man. Don't miss it. Man, you know what to do.
Welcome to Para Podcast. It's your girl Candace here, and I'm super excited for the episode that is in store today. Today we have a super special honorary episode of this podcast where we get to celebrate someone very near and dear to the Para family, our founder, visionary, creator, and my husband, baby daddy, love of my life, my best friend. And I cannot wait to interview him and talk a little bit about his life as we celebrate 40 years. Happy birthday, Joe.
Thank you.
And we are looking forward to celebrating with you. This super special episode is a tribute and an honor to Joe. As we continue on, you will get to hear a little bit more about him, learn some more of his story, and understand the man behind the mission. And so let's get into it.
Let's go.
First of all, I really wanted to just take a moment to sit on the couch and have a conversation with you in celebration of a major milestone, 40 birthday, 40 years on the earth. And as someone that has had the privilege of walking intimately with you, close and personal, for just shy of about 20 years, like for a very long time, I'm just really excited to celebrate this milestone with you. And, I know for me, it's been a reflective time just thinking through all that I've watched you produce in your life up until this point. And so I just wanted to kind of get a sense of how you're feeling and where you are. And so we're just going to ask a few questions and kind of pick your brain.
Okay.
And just get to know Joe,
Right.
All right. So, how does it feel turning 40?
On my, I don't know if it's specifically 40 or if it's just where I happen to be in my life, but, it's a convergence of a lot of feelings. I feel like I have a lot to be grateful for. I feel like I've come a long way. We happen to be sitting back here in Atlanta where, I'm originally from, but that's off of coming off of all my experiences in Atlanta as a young kid, teenager, all of that. But then having left home and been gone for quite some time, I was going away from here in Atlanta for 15 years. There's so many things, so many adventures I had, so many things I had to overcome and to, be really diligent about to try to achieve my dreams and my goals and things of the sort. And here I am back in the space having, achieved a lot of the things that I set out to do. But I know all of the roadblocks and the hurdles and the obstacles and the things that, required me to be resilient and to persevere. And first off, I'm grateful for my life. I feel like, predominantly I'm blessed, God has been really good to me. He's prospered me in a lot of ways. I'm relatively doing well professionally. I have my life, health, and strength. I have you, lovely wife, have 2 beautiful kids, have a lovely home, stuff like that. So, for the most part, I have more than I really, could have imagined when I was younger on the fundamentals of that type of stuff. But then at the same token, as you grow, you have dreams and visions and aspirations, and these things begin to kind of expand for you personally. But when you have a relationship with God, they expand in that context to say, oh, these are the things I feel like God has purposed me to be and to do and to accomplish and all those things. And I'm a very vision driven person. So at this stage, I happen to be in a place to where there are many things I have accomplished and overcome, but these were precursors to some of the things that I'm currently in my life trying to manifest. And it makes you look back and look over the horizons of like all that you have already had to overcome and all the things you had to persevere, all the decisions you already have made, all the things you now can retrospectively learn from and evaluate. When you're sitting on the front side of the thing, you have ideas, and ideals about
Mm-hmm.
um, what a thing is going to look like, how it will feel, where you will be at certain stages.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when we're envisioning things, we envision all the good, glamorous aspects of things because you don't even have the context to, consider all the other things that will come along with your life.
Exactly.
But when you come to certain stages in life, you've lived enough to be able to kind of look backwards and say, oh man, now I have all this context and these experiences and these um understandings of like what comes along with life and sacrifices and your choices and all those things. And then you also are further looking over another horizon to say, oh man, I got X more things that I really want to do and be and achieve, X more years of living and things like that. And, it's just a very introspective time,
Mm-hmm.
to evaluate, am I on track? Has it all been worth it? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Am I content with myself? Am I comfortable where I am? Am I comfortable in my skin? Is there any learnings that I've gained that, may be deserving of some adjustments and some pivots and
Mm-hmm.
some, you know, whatever type of changes so that the next X amount of years and half of my life um, can be even more productive or more on target in whatever areas, So these are all the things that's kind of, swimming through my mind. And like I said, most of my problems are good problems. It's problems people would wish for, but I'm a very, driven person,
Mm-hmm.
very internally motivated and vision motivated person. So, I'm always trying to push for, um, being on center to purpose and being fulfilled in that, so that's what's on my mind right now. And trying to get fresh insight and perspective and vision for my next steps.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. I mean, everything you shared, there's so much inside of that. And that's actually why I wanted to kind of pick apart a few elements and just kind of dive a little bit deeper because, to be honest, I feel like this milestone and just some of the contemplations that are happening right now are what makes the foundation and the ideas behind Para so powerful,
Mm.
because you have a leader who has had vision and drive and determination and has hit roadblocks and obstacles and overcome a lot to manifest the life that you envision, and there's still more. um but thinking about para and the concept of para and the fact that you know the idea is to come alongside, right, and to help. That's like the heartbeat behind this podcast. And so I feel like what a more um, perfect opportunity to dig in a little bit to help other people by sharing some of your knowledge and experiences that you've had along the way. Because there's someone who's 20 years old, that's trying to figure it out, that has a vision, has drive, that, you know, doesn't know all the things to do. They're praying, they feel a sense of assignment and purpose, and, may not see that life looks anything like what they are hoping for, right? And don't know if they'll ever get to where it is that they have in their heart to get to. And so
Yeah.
I feel like you have, like, what better person to share the the spirit and truth of your experiences to really help and impart wisdom to other people, you know? Um, and so that makes me want to kind of hone in on a couple of things that you just mentioned. Um, you mentioned that you grew up in Atlanta. Um, the short version of the story is, and I'm sure our audience will get to know more over time, um, but that you grew up in Atlanta when you were 18, you left home, went to college in Virginia, paid your way through school, like worked full time, did school full time, like grinded it out, graduated, and went right into your profession, and then have gone from one level to the next, right? So you've achieved things in multiple levels. There's levels of, dreams. You've achieved things educationally, you've achieved things professionally, you've achieved things in your relational life and family life, right? And there's a lot of lessons, I'd imagine, that have been learned along the way of those accomplishments. So I'm just curious to know, um, what are some of those lessons? Like, if you could summarize at this stage, looking back, what are some lessons, major lessons that you learned about, like, just being a person that has vision in your heart and trying to go after that with everything you have?
Wow. Wow. I mean, across, these nuances, there's a lot of lessons. Of course, I'm trying to think of the things that I think are the most critical or the most significant lessons
Mhm.
that may have been the catalyst to set out to do achievements and fueled other pursuits and lessons that came from those pursuits. I think the first thing I'll throw out there is, we all have our experiences, positive and negative, and but nothing's really wasted.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think it's based on how we internalize our experiences and what we do about them. I've had seasons of my life that I didn't always feel like I had control or had power to determine my contentment with life
Mhm.
and my happiness with life. And when you don't feel like you're in control, it's easy for you to just kind of like settle with that and,
Yeah.
you know, get depressed or,
Mhm.
just lose your sense of power to do anything about it. You could even become a victim if you want. And sometimes people are victims in life on things that may be going on because, things may come into your life or be introduced in your life that you were not the initiator of the thing.
Mhm.
It's just something circumstantially that is now in your life.
Mhm.
So once again, you can become a victim and allow it to really, damage your spirit. Or you can decide that, oh man, I'm going to stand up and do something about, my life and where I want to go, what I want my life to look like. Um,
Mhm.
and that takes a level of courage and faith and all that. And a lot of times people expect to kind of know everything about where they want to go and what they want to do. But sometimes what's even more powerful is knowing what you don't want, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and allowing the things that you don't want to be a form of fuel
Mm.
to the pursuit for what you do want,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So, you know, sometimes even the negative things in life are the fuel you need because it informs you,
Yeah.
it activates something in you
Mhm.
and it gives you a chance to make a decision,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so for me, in my background, there were many great things I experienced growing up and things like that. But then there were things that, I wanted different. I wanted other experiences. I wanted to find myself. I wanted more contentment, more happiness. I wanted, um, to grasp more things that I felt were forms of prosperity. And prosperity isn't just tangible stuff. So prosperity is like a sense of purpose, a sense of peace, a sense of happiness, a sense of fulfillment, a sense of being able to experience life at its highest level.
Mm.
That's on on the spiritual side, in your soul, as well as tangibly, right?
Mhm.
And so some of my experiences clearly told me what I did not want.
Yeah.
So then I made a decision, and I
Mhm.
said, you know what? I got a picture of what I want to do,
Mhm.
but I'm determined to get out there by any means necessary and figure out how to take control over what I don't want and start painting,
Mm.
my own canvas about what my future will look like
Mhm.
and the type of life I want to live. And that, I already was a person of faith growing up in a very spiritual household,
Mhm.
but that activated a whole nother dimension of faith for me.
Mm.
It wasn't just the general belief that God is and he exists and he has these rules and things he wants us to follow and all
Yeah.
that. It was a life of faith to say, God, I'm stepping out to pursue something that I need your guidance, I need your wisdom, and only by your power and your strength can I achieve what I'm setting out to do. And that transformed my life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That activated something in me that I still live by today, to
Mhm.
say, oh man, I'm always pursuing something that's on the inside of my heart, and I'm relying on God for his empowerment, and not just regular empowerment, like I can get out there and do a thing, but it's like results that it's clear that there's something different
Mhm. Mhm.
on me
Yeah, yeah.
about
Yeah.
my ability to achieve these things. um and I think the blessing on starting that pursuit is it now has gone from one thing to the next. It
Mhm.
started with one particular thing, but by the time I'm like believing God for another thing, he's like expanded my heart and my vision for the next thing and the next thing. This thing has become like a perpetual thing that
Yeah.
I'm always living from the inside out,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um but once again, it would have been great had it started from Jump Street, like, oh, I got a vision, and I want to jump out there and do. And it's not that I had no vision,
Mhm.
but when it did begin, it was more about I know what I don't want to accept or don't want to live in or settle for, and
Mhm.
I know there's greater. And that was enough fuel for me to say, by any means necessary, hell or high water, I'm getting out here.
Yeah.
I'm jumping off the porch, man.
Yeah.
I'm, about to go make this happen.
Mm.
And but all in all, I'm just thankful for just God's grace, because it really takes that God component to make all the difference, because we can always jump off with ambition,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with ambition, but sometimes there can be ambition that doesn't prove to be um, to your benefit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm thankful that the things that I aspired towards when I jumped out, and God has been gracious to me and
Mhm.
has prospered me, and it's taken me from one stage and one season of my life to the next, and you know, like some decent amount of wins along the way,
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Man,
So
that's powerful. I mean, there's a lot in what you just said. Not just looking at the vision or the positives of the hope that you have for something, but also being able to assess what you don't want and like sticking to that to know and define um, what you're going to do, like the decision you're going to make to be empowered to fulfill the thing that's in your heart to do.
yeah, I mean, I have
Yeah.
a special relationship with that, to the point where it's not that you wish negative experiences on yourself or any other person,
Right.
but I do think people need a mixture of the good and the bad to have the right type of fuel for what it is they need to go out and pursue, because life isn't going to always be full of like comfort
Mhm.
and full of ease,
Mhm.
right? And there's nothing like already knowing what you don't want
Yeah.
that gives you a resilience to where you're like, well, hey, even if I run into a bump, it's nothing compared to this thing that I know for sure I don't want. So
Mhm.
I got to keep pushing through
Right.
this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As opposed to if
Mm.
your entire reward system is about all positives,
Mhm.
well, what are you going to do when you run into a negative? Because I find that most things that are very valuable in life, they're guarded and protected, and there's barriers to entry or barriers to
Mhm.
obtaining it, and it
Mhm.
is in the form of obstacles.
Yeah.
And you need to know how to navigate that. You need to have the fortitude. You need to have the resilience. You need to have the dog in you
Yeah.
to, you know, do what you need to do
Yeah.
and put in the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. So you developed through the obstacles. You develop resilience. You develop like like you said, that dog, the thing that makes you keep going even when it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's powerful. Yeah, hopefully, I mean, I'd imagine, I know for me, that's encouraging, but, I know that that is speaking to someone in the audience that, and our listeners that are in seasons that are difficult, because life is hard. Achieving anything great is difficult. And so, letting the adversity kind of shape you and build character and perseverance in you is, it's a positive perspective on something that's difficult. And those are the types of jewels that I know you have to give the world, because of the experiences that you've endured to get to the places of success that you're in now. So
Yeah, I mean, I think you gotta, life presents you opportunities to see what you really have in you,
mm,
and you gotta be afraid, or you have to not be afraid to test what's really in you. So
mhm,
my experiences has made me first have high confidence in God,
yeah,
and then high confidence that God is with me,
mhm,
and high confidence in myself with God,
yeah,
where it's like, you know,
mhm,
you know. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to predominantly take wins, but even in the things that some people would take as losses,
mhm,
well, that comes down to your perseverance and your ability to endure it and then see it all work out to your benefit, right?
yeah,
And, when I look back, all the things I've gone through that were even challenges have worked out to my benefit, right? So it showed me really what I had in me,
mhm,
So now it's not a whole bunch that, I'm shaken by
mhm,
or I'm not up for.
mhm,
And hey man, if I'm getting in a fight, I expect to either win or you're really gonna have to earn this.
yeah,
You're gonna really have to earn handing me an L.
right,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
It's how I look at things.
yeah,
And it's because of the journey of perseverance
mhm,
and all that type of thing, and having to just really stand and be motivated from the inside out, no matter what things you encountered on the outside in your pursuit for a thing.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, and what you just shared, two words came to mind to kind of summarize that, which are tenacity and strength. You know, um, having tenacity and strength. And you've mentioned, God. You've mentioned your relationship with God. You've mentioned, kind of partnering and co-laboring with God to accomplish things and have the strength to endure. Um, so, of course, as your wife, I know that that's the source of much of your ability to endure, persevere, overcome, and ultimately become successful. Um, what would you? How would you describe your success? Like,
yeah, I think so first, I mean, I think that, have that conversation, it's kind of you got to contextualize it
mm,
in some ways. And it depends on how you define success, right?
mm-hmm,
I mean, I think the biggest success one can have in general is just having peace.
mm,
So most of my pursuits have been about peace,
mm-hmm,
right? And peace to me is number one, you know, getting to a place in your walk with God, first off, that you're just walking in freedom and you're walking in a level of liberty,
yeah,
and you're not being oppressed by anything spiritually or naturally
mm,
that's like dominating and taking over um, your life, your freedom, your
mm,
purpose,
mm-hmm,
your contentment,
yeah,
and your serenity, right?
mm-hmm,
And so that baseline expands into a lot of other things. Because for me, that's on a personal level,
Yeah.
but then that goes into my money, my domain,
Mhm.
my gifts, my talents, my
Mhm.
time,
Mhm. Yeah.
my everything. So there's a couple of tentacles that springboard off of that, right?
Mhm.
Um, so because of that pursuit to have just peace and my identity and my purpose and my time and my just inner contentment and all that type of stuff, it's made me want to pursue a level of dominion in all the spectrums of my life,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Meaning like, my mental health, my physical health, my relational health, the type of environment I want for my household and my family,
Yeah.
what I'm doing with my time professionally, all that type of stuff, how I earn resources and
Mhm.
money and all that, how I invest my time and my resources to really create legacy and all these different types of
Mhm.
things. So in that pursuit, I was able to jump out, go to college, coming from home, and no one from my immediate family had went to college prior to myself, and I'm the youngest. Got three older brothers, all that. My grandparents had 9 kids. Most of those kids, 7 of them were boys. So most of them did military. So for those that stepped out and did certain things, it was predominantly like military. And, by the time I was graduating, my brothers are all 4 and 5 years older than me. They, you know, didn't have someone just like clearly guiding them in the path of doing the collegiate thing. So I sought out to do that
Mhm.
myself, and it came with major sacrifice,
Mhm.
as you mentioned before. Like, I work full time and did school full time. So this was like 18 credit hours every semester, plus working 40 plus hours a week.
Mhm.
And then, through series of events, I ended up sitting a little bit of time out from school. So this type of workload was going on for 5 and a half some odd years
Yeah.
for
Wow.
me to, really accomplish that. But God prospered me
Mhm.
and enabled me to just really grind
Yeah.
and accomplish that, right? And I'm proud of that. Um, Not only just on a human level to say, oh, I went to college and I got a degree. It was just the life of faith and perseverance and all the stories I can tell
Yeah.
along that way that I'm proud of,
Mhm.
because I learned so much about myself and God through that, and my faith grew so significantly. And to
Mhm.
then achieve it made me feel like, man, God prospered me to do this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then that really fortified my faith and my inner strength for all the other pursuits I've done since.
Mhm.
So I started my corporate career
Mhm.
and just have been able to like achieve and climb and gain more skills and all that type of stuff, even in the midst of obstacles and challenges at times.
Yeah.
And then of course got married early,
Mhm.
shortly after finishing college. You and I got married
Yeah.
and all that type of stuff. And I mean, interestingly enough, I had just started my career and we got married. So some of the people that came into the job with me, when I told them I was engaged to get married, they were like,
What?
"Why?
Right.
Like, why? Why did you do that?"
Yeah.
But I had a vision about
Mhm.
like the type of life I wanted to build and family and all that type of stuff. And then,
Yeah.
of course, feeling like I found like a really quality person. So I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. Right.
Yeah.
But as you know, like, even building relationship, it's things you have to persevere and all that type of stuff and stay
Mhm.
committed to, the commitment that you made and the vision that you have for it and all that type of stuff. And
Yeah.
I feel like there are successes that's come from that.
Mhm.
Um, Even when it pertains to purpose, that has not only, permeated the foundations I'm building in our family and our profession, but business endeavors that I've set out to do, how that even translates to like more spiritual religious endeavors
Mhm.
and contributions and service and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that I feel like I've been able to get out there and do and achieve pretty successfully, predominantly solely relying on God's guidance and without
Mhm.
like a whole bunch of guidance,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's some wins and some successes that have happened business and investment wise. That's allowed me to, provide for our family in a way that I only hope you guys are very content with, right?
Mhm.
And but I'm content with like where we stand right now
Yeah.
in that regard.
Yeah.
And then, all of these things have been the foundations of like trying to pursue the other things we feel called to when it pertains to like creativity and ministry and
Mhm.
like business and all that type of stuff. So even what we're doing right here, these are investments
Mhm.
as far as having the tools and the capabilities to produce quality content.
Mhm.
Some may know, but of course, doing music production
Right.
and, music creation and having a production studio and all the different things,
Mhm.
that are at our disposal,
Right.
that came from faith pursuits
Yeah.
and fortunately God giving wisdom
Mhm.
and me being diligent,
Mhm.
and then the combination of that wisdom, the diligence, and the faith translating to some blessings and
Yeah.
some things paying off pretty well, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And you know, I I'm thankful
Mhm.
for those things, but all in all, I define success as not really a place that you arrive in,
Mhm.
because I think as long as you're alive, you're perpetually pursuing that and it's perpetually evolving, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
I think success is more about at each stage of your life, how on center are you in living a meaningful, impactful life that where you are optimizing and maximizing your skills, your gifts, your potential, your faith, and your God given purpose.
Mm.
And how is that enriching your life and the lives of people around you,
Yeah.
in a moment in time? And that's all subject to God's will
Right.
within that moment of time,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And do you have an inner peace that you are you know, on target, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Is how I see that. So
Mhm.
even with where we began, well, that's the evaluation, that I'm always doing, not just because I'm turning 40,
Yeah, right. Right. Right.
but it's the specific stage we're in that I'm doing a big evaluation of all of that. And I
Mhm.
happen to be turning 40 in the same
Yeah.
time period,
Yeah.
because there are like major steps that, we're trying to make
Mhm.
that have been the fuel for almost everything I've ever done
Right.
up until this point. Believing that, oh, it's going to get me to a certain place
Right.
that's very centered to my what I believe my overarching purpose is,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so just evaluating all of that. And
Yeah.
I'm always, looking and analyzing on, am I on center to that?
Yeah. You mentioned and or described an evolution of the definition of success, right? Through this whole process, where would you say has your definition changed much over the years, or has it kind of always been in this space? You mentioned having success and thriving in every area of life. You talked about, spiritually, mentally, in your health and relationally, professionally, and then even in pursuit of purpose. Has that always been your definition of what it means to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think at a really young age or relative young age, when I was in my teens, this framework of success got into my mind,
Mm.
So to even give me more context of that, coming from a very spiritual household,
Mhm.
there was so much emphasis put on spirituality and faith.
Yeah.
So let's give more context to that, for whomever may be listening and may not know. Father's a pastor.
Mhm.
So, and, we spend all our lives like trying to build ministry and do church and all that and serving and sacrificing for that, right?
Mhm.
And that man laid such a rich foundation
Mhm.
for the meaning of life and the what's really significant, right?
Yeah.
But what I also came to realize is, well, true prosperity, true peace transcends just what's done on like a Sunday or a Wednesday,
Mhm. Mhm.
or, you know, solely everything being solely focused on the more religious thing,
Mhm.
and that faith is not just about religious practices. Faith is about the fulfillment of your life in all the spheres of life,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So that's, well, whether you're doing something to serve your community, in particular in a church building, like a building with a steeple on it or something. I mean,
Mhm.
most churches don't have steeples now, but back then, right?
Yeah.
But are you happy at home? Like, if you're doing stuff at
Ooh.
church and you and your wife are about to get a divorce, or your kids are
Yeah.
depressed,
Right.
strung out on drugs or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
then are you
Are
really
you
prospering?
successful?
Are you successful?
Yeah.
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 You can preach the paint off the walls, but
Mhm.
when people get under the covers, you guys are
Mhm.
miserable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or yeah, you may be doing religious activities, but are you broke? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, you know,
Right.
do you not
Mhm.
know how to prosper
Mhm.
financially? And
Mhm.
I'm not saying that everything is about material things, and we
Right.
all have a measure
Yes.
that we're called to live in.
Mhm.
But you know, have I tapped into understanding how this world works,
Mhm.
and how to take the gifts that God has put in me
Mhm.
and making them profitable,
Mhm.
so that I can bring the substance to my life to
Mhm.
live the type of life I want for my family,
Mhm.
and to experience this life and all that it has to offer, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to fuel things that I feel are my purpose, whether
Mhm.
that is ministry or something else. Like,
Mhm.
this life requires resources, right?
Yeah.
And am I maximizing that? Well, that
Mhm.
same thing also translates to even time.
Yeah.
If if you are low on resources, then you tend to be low on time too. Because
Yeah.
most people who don't have a lot of resources, they're spending most of their time and their energy
Mhm.
trying to get resources,
Mhm.
right? So it robs you of your freedom to give your time and your energy to what you want when you want, or
Right.
even go experience nuances in life. Like, I mean, how many people work all year and never take a vacation,
Right.
or
Yeah.
you name the thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
then when you think about religion, it's about how we impact and transform the world around us,
Mhm.
for it to ideally maybe one day be this utopian world that the Lord always wanted. But
Mhm.
what I realized is, well, much of the world is not governed by religion.
Right.
It's governed by other spheres of life,
Mhm.
business, economics, finance,
Mhm.
media,
Right.
all these other things,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so I started to feel like, oh man, we need to learn how to be impactful in these other spheres
Right.
in order to truly transform the worlds around us.
Mhm.
And how do we come up with a holistic life to do so,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's what informed a
Mhm.
lot of my pursuits. And these
Mhm.
concepts came into my mind when I was in my teenage years, like 15, 16, stuff like that. So by
Yeah.
the time I turned 18, I came up with a plan to, like,
Mhm.
how do I get out here and start filling some gaps in some of these areas
Mhm.
to more empower myself to live a meaningful, impactful life
Yeah.
that I want, right?
Yeah.
And so there were some blueprints that got in my mind between like 16, 17, up until about maybe 21, that has really, and it's expanded since then, but it became
Yeah.
the a core that has kind of fueled me all the way up to 40,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
I think this is the first season of my life that some of the definitions are up for question.
Mm.
Actually,
Yeah.
you know, some of the questions, some of the definitions are up for question
Mhm.
at this age,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Cuz you you know, you have things in your brain that you think
Mhm.
are the answers,
Mhm.
or are you know, um the path.
Yeah.
You think it's things that you believe,
Mhm.
you know, and you give a lot of energy, you give a lot of time,
Mhm.
you give a lot of sacrifice to.
Mhm.
But then you come to seasons of life and say, oh man, like, you know, I have spent quite a bit of time
Mm.
and energy and all that type of stuff from certain angles.
Yeah.
And, you know, am I on target? Are
Mm.
things what I think they are?
Right.
The things that I thought would be what they would be.
Mm-hmm.
At this stage, do they actually give me peace?
Mm-hmm.
Um, do I still have the same passion for some of the things
Yeah.
that I thought before? Um, and then when life's,
Mm-hmm. Because life be life, eh?
yeah, life's for sure. Um, you also become more clear about the variables you can't control
Yeah.
too,
Very true.
you know? And you know, so it makes you have to make adjustments and
Yeah.
different things of the sort.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there's a fundamental level to where my definition of success still has the same framework. It's like the same house,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe some walls, you know what I'm saying, have
Yeah.
either been painted some different colors or some
Mm-hmm.
walls maybe are being torn down some. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I really think about it, there are a couple of beams that were like really core uh pillars in my framework of what would like be success.
Mm-hmm.
Like 20-year-old version of me was thinking by the time I
Yeah.
turned 40,
Yeah.
X thing would be a
Mm.
core pillar
Mm-hmm.
of my definition of success.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a couple of these beams that have gotten knocked out, that have gotten knocked out of the house,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Mm.
in truth, in some cases, you grieve
Yeah.
the removal of some of the beams that you thought would be so critical.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to ask yourself, oh, do I replace this? Was it load bearing? Like for my
Mm-hmm.
house to continue to stand, do I
Right.
need to replace it with something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or oh, we didn't even need that beam.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it gave the house more space.
Right.
It opened up my
Yeah.
kitchen living room space. That type of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And I'm in the process.
Yeah.
I'm in that process.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think I am reframing
Mm-hmm.
right now in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fundamentally the same house, I
Yeah.
would say.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I feel like any milestone, which of course we're talking about 40 because of where we are now, but I feel like that reframing process happens at every new stage. It's an indication of a new season and an indication of going into something different than what you've experienced before. You know, reframing after college when you're going into your professional career, like reframing leaving from home, going to college and reframing after you get married. Like you're no longer an individual. You now have, a family. And then reframing once you become a parent. And then, so I think that it's absolutely, we should at least be expecting to evaluate and reframe because it's an indication of a new season. Um, and I just love one of the things I really love about you is that you take the time to ponder and think through um, all of these nuances and evaluate realistically, like, the reality of where things are. Um, and that you make decisions about what to do about it um, versus, again, like you said, life can life and it can get difficult and it can become easy to settle with what's familiar and not face, the disappointment that can come along with some of the ideas that you had not like once you get to a place it not being exactly what you had in mind. Um, and I think that's an important process to go through. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a person that was like a mentor of mine,
Mm.
say, I live in a perpetual meditative state.
Yes, you do. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always in a reflective, pensive, meditative, analytical place.
Mm-hmm.
Even in real time while I'm processing on
Yeah.
the inside.
Mm-hmm.
But see, I think that comes from even where I began, meaning like I think it's some of the challenging experiences, even if one may deem trauma, traumatizing experiences in life that
Mhm.
made me just a very analytical, meditative person to
Mhm.
where, I'm paying attention to all details, I'm processing, I'm assessing,
Mm.
I'm discerning on a deeper level, I'm
Mhm.
self-reflecting, I'm self actualizing and like, you know, you know, what I'm this next thing I'm going to say typically is something someone else has to say about you. But I mean, sometimes, I don't know that people would say if they were describing me, Joseph is a person with a very high uh, level of emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But I actually am.
Mhm.
I think most of the time when people talk about high emotional intelligence, they talk about your awareness about how other people feel and how you make other people feel.
Mhm.
But that has some assumptions to it
Mhm.
that says, oh, because I can sense how I make you feel, I automatically adjust and cater to it.
Mhm.
And I'm the type of person that, well, not only am I paying attention to how I make other people
Yeah.
feel, but that deeper subconscious, spiritual, um, subconscious innate motivations that inform how I
Mhm.
make a person feel,
Mhm.
and then I make a decision about it.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, I care. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Yeah.
Or I say, no, there's
Mm.
something motivating them
Mhm.
that they can't even see about themselves, and I'm not going to cater to
Yeah.
that. Right?
Discernment. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And some people love it, some people don't.
Yes,
Right?
of
Right?
course.
And I think over the years have gotten more gracious and stuff like that. I can admit that when I was younger, it was a little more like, hey, you know,
Right.
yeah, your feelings don't belong to me. You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now that I'm older, I'm a lot more, people conscious and stuff like that.
Mm.
But um, you know, yeah, I mean, it's a thing where, you know, um, I try to be as aware beneath the surface as I can because I believe life and truth lives below the surface.
Mhm.
And, so for example, a lot of people probably would say they experience me as an extrovert, an
Mhm.
extrovert.
Yeah.
But I say I'm more of an ambivert
Mhm.
because yeah, I can be talkative, yeah, I can have a lot to say, yeah, I can even have a strong personality once I am expressing myself, but people are typically getting the tip of the iceberg. Like
Mhm.
there's far more going on the inside of me and
Yeah.
underneath the surface than what I'm actually giving out,
Right.
and I know you may be a bit biased because you're actually my wife and you get to hear and see uh, the things that are below that surface.
Mhm.
And, and I have select friends that, have a view into that.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
But, that's where I think the magic, if you will, is.
Yeah.
It's what's below the surface,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah. No, that's powerful. And that's really true. And that's one thing I do appreciate about the time and the age that we live in now. You did talk about how your definition of success kind of started from just kind of the culture that you grew up in. I grew up in church too, so I can connect to some of the nuances of what you did not say out loud about your observations of the world around you, and then your that shaped your curiosity and your desire to for better, and like, how can we make this better, how can we be more effective, right? um and so when you talk about that as it pertains to success, and that shaping your definition and reframing at this season of life, all the introspection, the reflection that you do, um, makes me grateful that we're in a culture now that promotes that self reflection, being pensive, that introspection through therapy,
Yeah.
through prayer, through if you're a believer in the body of Christ, reading scripture, prayer, meditating on the word of God, but also through therapy and having friends and, like you said, close people in your life that you can, really synthesize and analyze, your thoughts and experiences
Hmm.
with to grow.
Yeah.
Um,
But what's so interesting? I'm such an interesting person in that regard. Especially when I was young, being raised with not only a very spiritual family and father,
mhm,
but just the specific father I had. I often I didn't really have a opportunity to be a kid. So the
mhm.
type of stuff that was on my mind at like
Yeah.
9 and 12 and stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
my friends weren't thinking
It's
about this stuff,
that's
right?
true. That's true.
So I often felt like, oh man, people weren't
Mhm.
deep enough or
Mhm.
introspective enough and all that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then now that we're in this world that everyone's more like, oh, therapy and stuff like that, sometimes I'm like, it's too much,
It can
right?
be, it can be.
But yes, everyone should,
Yeah.
do the
Mhm.
work, do
Mhm.
your
You have
work.
to do the
It's your
work.
self work. But
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is, I think what's most important is what it's regulated by.
Yeah.
What it's regulated by,
Mhm.
and so I think most of my introspection isn't just about in general how am I feeling
Mm.
or what am I thinking
Mhm.
or what is my life experiences translating to in my emotional life or my soul and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a assessment of those things against what I feel is the truth
Right.
and
Yeah.
and the source of truth.
Yes.
So I will say there's a generation that tried to home in so much of what they feel was true that there is just a disregard
Mhm.
for the impact on people's emotions and
Mhm.
their soul and
Mhm.
even tangible health and
Right.
relational health and all these things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And to your point, I think we're much more at a day that people are much more conscious that,
Mhm.
hey, man, we have these realms of life. We have our mind and our soul and our emotions and our spirit and,
Mhm.
and our body that needs to be well taken care of, right?
Mhm.
But then we have this side of the coin that while we do need to recognize and acknowledge the things that are happening to our soul and our emotions and in our mind and things like that, it becomes a exaltation and a prioritization of that
Yeah.
above a baseline of
The truth.
truth
Yeah.
that it can be assessed by.
Yes.
So what I'm always trying to do is do the internal work to acknowledge
Mhm.
how I'm feeling and what I'm going through and how
Mhm.
things translate into my behaviors and my thoughts and all
Mhm.
that. But I'm always assessing it against
Mhm.
the truth. And it's not just a general truth of like, when most of the time when people think about religion, they think about the Bible and the thou shalt
Right,
nots.
right, right.
I'm more assessing it against, yes, the kind of written
Mhm.
scripture and all that,
Mhm.
but a relationship with God
Mhm.
to allow him to speak to me by revelation
Right.
and tell me the truth
Mhm.
about each moment and experience I'm going through
Mhm.
so that I can truly diagnose a thing and call it what it is
Mhm.
and say, oh yeah, that's this,
Mhm.
and have these perpetual epiphany and light bulb
Right.
moments about the truth of a thing.
Yeah.
Say, oh yeah, that's what I'm going through. This is what I'm
Mhm.
feeling. Oh, this is this. This is this. I mean, I know you as my wife. He's see me do this all the
Yeah.
time to
Yeah.
where I'll be like, oh man, I woke up this morning and I realized this is the truth of
Mhm.
like how I'm feeling and what I'm going through, and this is the spiritual aspect of that and the implications of it. This is the emotional and the soul
Right.
side of it, and here's what I think I need to do,
Mhm.
or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But it has to be with a baseline of truth and through a relationship with the truth, and the truth is God.
That's
God
right.
is truth,
That's
right?
right.
And that relationship
Yeah.
helps us to continually evolve and be our healthiest self, and
Mhm.
that's a ongoing pursuit as long as you're breathing, that type of
Absolutely.
thing. So
Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to what you said earlier, um, about having the framework of success in every area of life because God cares about all of it. you know.
Yeah.
Um, every single piece of it. It's so good. It's so good. See, it just flows. Like this is what I get to live with every day. Um, and that's actually what I love about you
Yeah.
because you know, I admire and am inspired by your relationship with God, you know, and that was actually the thing that drew me to you the most. Like
Mm.
when we first met each other.
It
Um,
wasn't because I was just,
I mean, you fine. You are fine. You fine.
Ah.
That is it.
Okay.
But I was like, and he loved Jesus, like for real.
Oh, you saw the oil on me. You saw that
I
glow on me
did. I saw
when I
the glow.
came
I saw
in. It
the
was a glow.
worship.
It was a glow.
It was a
Okay.
glow, and it was. I saw the worship, and I was like, oh, he don't even care. Like he'll cry and worship God. Like he don't even care about
Hey,
what
I'm
anybody
hard, yo.
thinks.
No. Yeah, no, I mean, I think
Yeah.
okay, so I'll wow, people haven't really I don't know that people have heard me talk about this or attribute this. But I think I get that from my dad.
Mhm.
My dad, most people that know my dad's a rough character, he's a rough dude. You don't get a whole bunch of like sensitive emotions from him. But really the only time I really saw my dad cry is when he was worshiping. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
when my dad would like pray and worship and stuff like that, he would like,
Mhm.
full fledged, do that.
Mhm.
He'll wake us out of our sleep, with his
Yeah.
praying and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I think God added some elements to me that took it a little bit further because I'm like literally a worshiper.
You're right. Yeah.
I'm a
Yep. Yep.
musician and a
Mm.
singer and all that type of
Mhm.
stuff. And, my dad isn't that. My dad was a street dude that got saved, and now he's
Yeah.
a warrior for Jesus, that type of
Yeah.
stuff. But me having that worship element, I think, added a whole nother level of uh, that tenderness,
Mhm.
pause, you
Mm.
know what I mean? But no,
Ain't
that
no problem.
tenderness in my relationship with God,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I'm not really ashamed of that because
Mm-mm.
I know that's where my strength comes from.
Mhm.
He's the only really helping friend I know I have for sure,
Right.
and
Mhm.
in the days when I had no person to
Mhm.
rely on or to call or to whatever, it was always God.
Yeah.
And this, but using, for example, my season when I was in college, I had many days I didn't know how I was going to make it, how I was
Yeah.
going to eat, where I
Yeah.
was going to live, where I was
Mhm.
going to sleep, stuff like that, or how I was going to pay for school in the next semester, and so many things.
Mhm.
And there were times, man, I would just wander up and down the campus, like, man, how am I going to make it?
Yeah.
When I was staying on the campus, there was a chapel on the campus, and there were times when all my friends would be out having fun, partying and stuff. I would just go in that chapel,
Mhm.
and I would just get on the piano and just play and worship and just really minister to myself,
Mhm.
and that helped me continue to persevere. And
Mhm.
then seasons later, once I, had a place, there were seasons where I had got me a keyboard,
Yeah.
and I would take that keyboard and just be like in the house by myself, man, just playing, praying, worshiping and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Just really encouraging myself
Mhm.
in that time period. And it's just really where I really cultivated my relationship with God even further.
Mhm.
So it's what I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I'm worshiping, other people aren't even really present to me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
you
You're
know,
right.
other
Like
people aren't even
it's
in the room for
yes.
me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, it's what I know. It's um what matters most to me,
Mhm.
and can't see it any other way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And those are the things that, I'm excited for um really the world to kind of get to share in and kind of get a glimpse into as you share more about your testimony and your relationship with God. It's like, you know, unveiling your life and sharing more to help others is to me, I always think about David in Psalms. Like when we read those Psalms, we see like so many different experiences and emotions and you see all sides of everything you just described. Like, we see how where his thoughts are, we see where his emotions are, but ultimately he's analyzing those things up against the truth. And I love that in the songs, because he was a worshiper, we get to see and experience and be encouraged by someone who have opened up their relationship with God in a way that we can just read and find, relate to in our own life experiences. And so
Yeah, he's
that's
an
what that makes me
open
think
book.
of. Yeah,
Yeah, we get it's like we're reading his journal,
exactly.
if you will. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I feel like, that's what we're all supposed to be, because we're all living epistles. We're all open books. All of our stories are written, in heaven. God already knows the end from the beginning. And so as we share, we overcome by the word of our testimony, and the blood of the Lamb. Um, we open up ourselves, even to others, to receive impartation of encouragement, or encourage each other in faith, and build community around that, so that we can produce the fruit that God created us to produce in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, often we don't really appreciate like the power of memorials. You talked about like
Mm-hmm.
overcoming by the blood of the lamb and the word of our testimony. There's a study that I've been recently doing, and it's really focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
And the emphasis of this study is when Joshua took over leadership, from Moses, and the children of Israel were ready to cross over into the promised land finally, but they had to cross the Jordan. And in the process, they might have thought, well, man, we've been wandering in this wilderness for 40 some odd years. Like, why do we got to yet again deal with another obstacle? We're right there to get to, the promised land. Why do we now got to be standing in front of this thing that's in our way to
Yeah.
get to where we want to go?
Mm-hmm.
And but God said, hey man, have all the children of Israel come down to the Jordan, and have the Levites, those that carry the Ark of the Covenant, first go before them, and when they see the Ark of the Covenant move, follow after them,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
keep a distance.
Mm-hmm.
And then he told Joshua to tell the Levites that, hey, when you carry that Ark of the Covenant, put your feet down into the Jordan and stand firm, holding the Ark of the Covenant, and I'll cause, the waters to rise and all that type of stuff, and I'll part the Jordan. But
Mm-hmm.
he said in the third chapter, well, by this you'll know for sure that when you cross over into the promised land, I will cause you to triumph over the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Jebusites and all
Mm-hmm.
the sites
Mm-hmm.
that were there.
Well, that's powerful.
And as a sign, God told them, well, I'm going to cause these waters to rise and for you to cross over on dry land. And it will be a sign for you that I'll cause you to be successful. But not only will it be a sign that I'll cause you to be successful when you cross over into this promised land, I want men from every tribe to go get stones
Mm-hmm.
out of that Jordan and to take it with them. And when you come over into your land of promise, set those stones up as a memorial
Mm-hmm.
of what I've done,
Mm-hmm.
so that the future generations will look back, and when they ask, well, what's the meaning of those stones?
Mm-hmm.
It will be a perpetual testimony of what I've done for you,
Amen.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So often, we don't know the purpose of our challenges and
Mm-hmm.
our obstacles
Mm-hmm.
and the things that we go through. But it's really God trying to give us a testimony that
Yeah.
gives us overcoming power,
Mm-hmm.
and not only overcoming power for us that will fuel us as we go through our battles of Jebusites and Canaanites and Perizzites and whatever
Mm-hmm.
the ites are that
Mm-hmm.
are in our life, but
Mm-hmm.
it'll be memorials that'll spill into generations to come and be
That's
a
right.
legacy,
That's
that it'll be a
exactly right.
testimony.
Yep.
And that's really what that scripture
Mm-hmm.
about overcoming by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony is
Mm-hmm.
about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's us going through those things so that we can be a living epistle and
Mm-hmm.
open up our lives and tell our testimonies, and those testimonies being a memorial that others can draw from
Mm-hmm.
and get overcoming power that they need
Mm-hmm.
on their pursuits,
That's
right?
right.
For
Yeah.
promise.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful, because God is a covenant keeping God.
Yeah.
And, the fact that God told them that they didn't have to stand on anything else except his commitment to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like that's essentially what you've described in your experience over these years. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been standing this whole time with God, you
Yeah. I
know?
mean, it's the only hope that I have.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only thing that I am relying on. It's
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that has ensured any form of success.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to a point that I'm afraid to
Be
rely
without
on
it.
anything
Yeah.
else,
Yeah.
because I mean, once again, I'm thankful for the things that, God has afforded me to experience and have and garner in my life. But,
Mm-hmm.
it's like Solomon said, when you look back and you think over it all, it's all kind of vanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to bring you the ultimate fulfillment that you're really seeking for.
Yeah.
It's only really a relationship with God that's going to really fulfill that. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, um, the journey is actually more important and more of the focus than necessarily destinations,
Mm-hmm.
and the perpetual proof that God is with me from one
Mm-hmm.
season to the next is my focus and my pursuit,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
what makes me content
Yeah.
and makes me feel successful.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I feel that, man, I don't feel the presence of God, I mean, this,
Mm-hmm.
it makes me have a deep sense of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh
Mm-hmm.
man, like, where's God? Like,
Mm-hmm.
where, something is off, or I'm not feeling his presence, and I'm not feeling like he's with me, or I'm on
Yeah.
censor to his will.
Mm-hmm.
There's a song that I think it was the Clark sisters,
Mm-hmm.
that was like the safest place in the whole wide world is in the will of God. I
Mm-hmm.
truly believe that when you're in the center of God's will, there's nothing that can defeat you or stop you
Mm-hmm.
or overtake you. Even if you go through an obstacle, God will make those obstacles work out to your good,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it'll be something that will become a springboard to what he has for you next, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's just where my heart and mind lives,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's such a powerful illustration because, naturally you think about 40 and, 40 years were the number of years that the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness. And then, Moses dies, Joshua gets in leadership, and the process you just described is where they have to go next. And I really do think that there is spiritual significance in that in real time. Like,
Mm.
where God's command is no matter what obstacles come, no matter um, how things look, stand on my covenant, promises, um, and watch me move.
Yeah.
And then don't forget, don't forget um, everything that I have done, and then share that with others.
Yeah.
It's super duper powerful. And I think that's very relevant to, this moment in time, um, this milestone. I think it's for you, specifically, but I also think it pertains to our family, because we are you,
Yeah.
I think it pertains to a lot of people who are finding themselves embarking on a new season, and in their journey and their walk with God. One of the questions I was going to ask you is, um, like what, like how would you stay motivated and inspired, like in your pursuits in this next decade? And I feel like you literally just answered that question, like, just remembering everything that God has done, and sharing that testimony with others. Is there anything else you would say?
Yeah, about, what would help me specifically
Mm-hmm.
remain motivated.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, so I'll say this. Yeah, matter of fact, I'll make a reference to the scriptures and the things that, we've already talked about, but I just want to pull out a nuance of it.
Mm-hmm.
So when Joshua was taking over, and once again they had to cross over the Jordan and step into the Jordan, it was the Ark of the Covenant that went first. And we know the Ark of the Covenant, it had a number of things inside that Ark
Mm-hmm.
of Covenant, but one of the main things was the commandments,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so that represented the word of God at that time, right? And we know the
Mhm.
Ark of the Covenant was something that represented the presence of God.
Yeah.
Like the Ark of the Covenant was what was in the holies of holies in the tabernacle,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so wherever the ark is, where his word is, that's
Mhm.
where his presence is, right?
Mhm.
And so when we think about the word, we think about this kind of, or we could think about this finite logos thing,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the logos is the written, known word of God.
Right.
But the scripture says, well, man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that proceedeth
Right.
out of the mouth of God. Well, proceedeth is something that's continually going.
Right.
So there is a perpetual declaration of God's word and his thoughts and his ideas and his insights and his revelations that God is continuing to speak and unravel to us.
Mhm.
And we just have to be in a place that we're tapping into that dimension
Mhm.
by the Holy Spirit. Biblically, the concept is the Rhema word of God, the word God
Mhm.
is perpetually speaking and releasing truth to
Yeah.
us. So I say all that to say, what will keep me going is a fresh word.
Yeah.
you know
Mhm.
yes, God has spoken things to me in the past that he's made good on, and there are memorials.
Mhm.
There are things he's spoken in the past that I'm still pursuing,
Yeah.
that I'm still believing in faith that God is going to make good on his word and fulfill
Mhm.
what he said.
Mhm.
But there are ways that I'm looking for a fresh word from God,
Yeah.
like a fresh insight, a fresh revelation, a fresh perspective,
Mhm.
a fresh um, decree and declaration about what his will is, what he's looking to do in me, through me, who I am in him,
Mhm.
and ultimately like God's approval
Mhm.
is what I am seeking after.
Mhm.
And so that's really what would really help me continue to keep going and keep
Yeah.
pushing.
Yeah.
Um, Even if it's, sometimes God just speaking another word about things he may have already spoken about, but just that reminder. I mean,
Mhm.
when we look at different pillars in the Bible, in a lot of their cases, there were multiple times that God came to them, and even if it was about the same topic, he came back again and he reinforced,
You did.
what it is he said, or even if it was past one individual, he came to previous, or, future generations and said, hey, because of your father X, or I promised X to this one, so I will do,
Mhm.
all that. So it's this, continuation of God,
Mm.
reaffirming, his intent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And, so, you know,
Yeah.
that's what would do it for me,
Yeah.
you know?
Just motivated by the word
Yeah.
and the not just the written word, but the spoken word, like the word of God that guides your steps every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super powerful.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Here's a question for you. Considering everything that we've discussed, what ways do you see yourself um, making an impact in the community and in the lives of those connected to you um, in the next, like during the rest of your life?
Wow. Um, Man, there's different ways that I've served, and I appreciate those ways.
Mm-hmm.
But there's, a lot of ways I feel like I haven't even really begun, like the type of impact I want to have with my life.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I want to be a person that God uses to be a conveyor of truth
Mm-hmm.
and his insights and his revelations and all those types of things, so that people can walk in the freedom
Yeah.
of truth, because all forms of freedom start with truth. The
Yeah.
Bible says you shall know the truth shall set you free.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like all Christians are, but I feel a personal um assignment or personal calling to be a conveyor of truth, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, I've always really felt commissioned to build systems that are transformative. Like
Mm-hmm.
they change culture, they empower people,
Mm-hmm.
they give they give avenues to put people in their place of purpose and assignment, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I really want the next decade or so to be like God really supernaturally empowering me and our family to build systems and platforms to convey truth in a poignant, powerful way,
Yeah.
but also build uh business and economic engines and systems that empower people and fuel the ability to spread truth and create creativity,
Mm-hmm.
and allow people to use their skills and their gifts to glorify God and to impact culture.
Yeah.
And I want these things to be economically impactful too,
Mm-hmm.
so that people can walk in freedoms and not be oppressed and walk in lack.
Mm-hmm.
I think, excuse me, one of the most powerful things that are dominating people's lives is the economic world.
Yeah.
Excuse me, simply because people are spending all their time waking up, pursuing just trying to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, excuse me, pursuing trying to survive
Yeah.
versus having the freedom to do what they really feel purpose to do,
Mm-hmm.
and um, targeting their gifts in the direction of things that they are really inspired by.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, excuse me, faith is about creating spaces and worlds and domains that there's a culture that glorifies God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of time what dominates culture is economics,
Yes.
and I mean the political sphere, the legal sphere, all these things are often dominated by economics,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think people of faith have to get more economically empowered. In fact, I think much of the Bible was God intentionally choosing spaces that he wanted to give to the children of Israel, not just to do it,
Right.
but for them to be the most economically empowered people
Mm-hmm.
in the world to then be able to shape culture,
Yeah.
right? To
Mm-hmm.
truly be the head and not the tail, above and not believe the lender, not the borrower, all the stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just really believing God to empower myself and those that I'm called to walk with in our little pocket of the world, if you will,
Yeah.
to create spaces to where we're walking in dominion and we can shape culture that glorifies God. We can empower people. We can convey truth. We can produce content and information and, creativity and all these types of things that, you know, is freeing, it's inspiring, it glorifies God, and we're walking in liberty and peace,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to do with my life,
Yeah.
and I've spent the first 40 predominantly laying foundations for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a lot of hard work,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like, I've predominantly been laying foundations for that. I haven't even really got started in the full execution of everything I just said because of all the foundations that have to be laid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm in this intersection of crossing over, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're making the reference of the children of Israel crossing the Jordan. And they were in 40 years in the wilderness,
Mm-hmm.
going through all these experiences, God teaching them all these things, taking them through all these trials,
Mm-hmm.
giving them all these commandments about how to live and all that. And, I'm pretty sure there were those that were exhausted, already just just from that. And then
Yeah.
he's like, well, you got to cross over this. And what people miss is that, well, when they crossed over the Jordan, that didn't mean once they got on the other side, they could then kick their
Just
foot
rest.
up,
Right. That's right.
or their feet up. It was no, you're going in here to
Now you
start
gotta fight.
war,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
At least when you were just in the wilderness, yeah, you were going through,
Mm-hmm.
some rough times, not having everything you want and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that, but you weren't necessarily warring with
Right.
people.
Right.
Now you got to cross over here and
Mm-hmm.
actually like really put in some work, like get,
Mm-hmm.
go to war.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Mhm.
So that's why a fresh word is important, because in a fresh word is renewed strength,
Yeah.
and it's another level of fuel to go
Mhm.
the other half of your race, if you will,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's kind of really where I feel like I am,
Yeah. Yeah.
wanting a fresh word from the Lord, fresh fuel, fresh creativity, fresh inspiration, fresh power, strength, and might,
Mhm.
fresh anointing.
Mhm.
I need it.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
I need it.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, I'm with you every day, so I know that that's true. And that's certainly my prayer. Is that every time, every birthday, I'm always, praying for whatever, asking God, like, what do you want to do, in Joe, or what does he need? And, that refreshing, that refueling, that's definitely like my prayer as well. And for me, I'm asking God to show me the ways to help lend to that. And, but also just be praying and open to, like, hey, however you want to do it, God, like, just believing with you and agreeing with you that, God will provide that for you.
Yeah.
Um, renew that strength for sure. So, yeah, that's powerful. Um, Man, we've shared a lot. We've talked about, you know, a little bit of your journey um over the last really like 20 years or so. We've talked about, frameworks and vision, frameworks for success. We've talked about relationship with God and that being the foundation of strength. We've talked about reliance on the word of God and, you know, and even success being defined as more than just I graduated, I have a degree, I bought a car, I have a family. It's deeper. It's no, I was created to do something. God made me for a purpose. And am I on track to achieve what I was made and born to do and put on this earth to accomplish? You know, um, so it's the concept of, like you said, going deeper than just what seems to be on the surface. And I think all of those things are um, powerful notes, powerful perspectives, and things that we all can take into our just the way we do life. I think each of us has um, ways that we can apply like these nuggets from your journey, to become closer to um, the image of God that we were created to be, and constantly pursue that. And so I know I'm encouraged by, this conversation, and I pray that our audiences as well, because, we all have been redeemed by Christ for God's purposes to be made fully manifest in our lives. And, we should be in pursuit of that all the time. And, you know, Para Podcast is about coming alongside and helping with that journey, in every sphere, just like you said, the vision being about being economically empowered. So we talk about business, we talk about ministry, we talk about family, we talk about finances, marriage, we talk about any and every topic because all of it matters to God. And God uses all of it for his kingdom purposes to be manifest in the earth. And so um, I just want to thank you for sharing your uh, experiences with us, kind of giving us some of the nuggets that um, kind of inform how you have managed your life until this point. Um, and I really appreciate even just walking with you all these years seeing your consistency. Like, I feel like the world is just now beginning to see, you know, who you've always been. Like, and I just want to thank you for your leadership and example, and the consistency, um, and just walking with God, putting Him first, no matter what's going on, constantly prioritizing Him and then letting Him lead you to build and lay the foundations that have been built. Now, my prayer is that God will continue to help us fill what's now been built so that it's fruitful and it's productive and that there's nothing, nothing goes to waste, but it's fully producing its fruit in every season.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I think it's a culmination of like the deposits and things that have been made over my life.
Mm-hmm.
Having the father that I had and coming from the family that I have and their examples, and not just the examples, but the intentional deposits of
Mm-hmm.
spiritual impartation that was made. Um, you know, I often, if all else failed, at least have my father
Yeah.
and that example in my brain that, helps me to keep going and
Yeah.
stay consistent with certain standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then, those faith deposits, those seeds have, sprung up fruit, and taken a life of their own.
Mm-hmm.
And as you pursue God and purpose, there comes a point where you get so deep out in the ocean
Yeah.
of that pursuit that
Mm-hmm.
you can't see the shore anymore. You
Mm.
can't. You can't turn around. Like you got to
Yeah.
keep going to
Yeah.
hit the other
Mm-hmm.
side of the shore, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because you've gone way too far
Yeah.
out into that ocean to turn around, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then now I also, have you and have our children and all that
Mm-hmm.
type of stuff, and it always was about. I think faith is uh there's a it's intertwined with legacy.
Yes.
Is
Mm-hmm.
if you really follow the scriptures in the
Mm-hmm.
Bible, faith is a core nuance and tenet that's all about the testimony of the legacy of
Mm-hmm.
relationship with God and the blessings and the prosperity that comes with that
Mm-hmm.
um, into generations,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And the real testimony of your life is what manifests in the generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what keeps me going too.
Yeah.
To say like, oh, okay, yeah, there's things. Well, first of all, family and legacy was always what was fueling most of my pursuits and my aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
So to turn around now and start doing stupid stuff, you know what I'm saying? Or
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
abandon
Mm-hmm.
that which is true
Yeah.
at the risk of your choices visiting the second, third, fourth generation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unwise,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I've given too much up to this point to
Mm-hmm.
then put it all at risk.
Mm-hmm.
And putting it at risk isn't always just something you can tangibly see. That's like, oh, you're squandering your money, or
Right.
you're being unfaithful to your wife or your
Right.
family, or
Yeah.
you're walking out on them, or
Right.
any of the stuff that'll be in a Tyler Perry movie,
Right.
right? There could be things and choices that are intangible
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
can show up
For sure.
later, and none of us are perfect,
Yeah.
but we should at least have a consciousness
Mm-hmm.
of wanting to walk in integrity and
Mm-hmm.
walk in character and walk in the truth
Yeah.
that we know as best as we can,
Mm-hmm.
because of a healthy respect that it all comes out in the wash,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In some way. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, I want my life to be one that, there's a legacy left,
Mm-hmm.
in a tangible way, but just in the spirit of it.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning like, man, I would like my kids, if and when they have kids and then their kids have kids, I want my friends and the community and around me and things like that. I want to have a good name,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um and not just a good name in the general sense to just say he was a good man.
Right.
I want to have a good name in a way that's like he was a good man, but the impact he made as far as the things he imparted to people, but
Mhm.
also the tangible things he built and contributed to this world, were significant
Right.
and his life mattered
Mhm.
is what I'm motivated by.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
only the Lord knows what the scope of that will be and the breadth
Mhm.
of that will be in my lifespan.
Mhm.
But I'm only praying that from here it'll be great.
Yeah. It will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. It will be.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's powerful. Oh, I feel like I could sit here and just talk to you all day and ask a gazillion questions. But I think this would be a good point to put a pin in it, and then come back with more because the benefit of this is that we get to do it again.
For sure.
And there's so much treasure in uh that you have to offer. And I'm excited for the world to get to see that through Para Podcast and other, creative endeavors that we have and that God has placed in your heart to do. So, with that being said, please tune in. I hope you enjoyed this interview just as much as I did. If you couldn't already tell, there's a wealth of knowledge, experience, and passion inside of Joe. And there's so much more creativity and vision. And I mean, he's highly intelligent, super funny, hilarious. Like, I'm looking forward to sharing with you all what I get to live with every day. And that's this treasure of a man in my life. And so,
Why, thank you.
yeah, thank you for being a gift to me and to our family. And I am so excited to celebrate you um, and that we're celebrating you turning 40.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks to all that, may show some love over the course of the days to come with my birthday. I really appreciate it in advance. And, it's an honor to serve you and our family. And I just really just hope that, my life is a benefit and a blessing to you all and others like never before, from here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So stay tuned for more. Follow us at the Para Podcast on all platforms. And till next time, bye.